Hello, next video is looking at assignment 502 and assessment criteria 2.4. So for the next few moments, I'm just going to talk through an approach to tackling this assessment criteria. So here we are, we're still on task 2, a written report focusing on the balance of skills and experience in the team. 2.4 asks us to examine the use of coaching and mentoring models to support team development. So examine means that we need to inspect it thoroughly to determine its condition or nature. How would I approach this question then? So examining the impact of coaching and mentoring models on team performance. So I'm going to begin actually by very briefly describing coaching and mentoring. And I recommend that just because we haven't necessarily approached that. Now, if you have in an earlier assessment criteria on this assignment already done this, you wouldn't need to do it again. You could just signpost back. But if you haven't, it could just be worth giving a quick definition of what actually these two things are so that we can discuss them. Coaching is unlocking people's potential to maximize their own performances, helping them to learn rather than teaching them. John Whitmore. Coaching is the art of facilitating the performance, learning, and development of another. Miles Downey. So, coaching is all about helping people to do things for themselves. It's often orientated to asking them the right questions so that they can come up with their own answers. It's very much about pull rather than push. Coaching is usually non-directive. It's not about giving people the right answer or the right thing to do. Of course, in certain contexts, so sports coaching, it might be more directive, but fundamentally coaching, if we look at these definitions, and certainly in the management domain, which is a little bit different to sports coaching and all the rest, is non-directive. Mentoring, on the other hand, is okay. So a mentor is a more experienced individual willing to share knowledge with someone less experienced in a relationship of mutual trust. Now, there's a lot of overlap here. And when we look at our little image on the right, you can actually see that coaching is one of the attributes of mentoring. So it might well be that your mentor also does a bit of coaching as well. So helping them to learn for themselves, sure. But so it's a little bit different here. So mentoring is about passing on knowledge, wisdom, and experience. So with coaching, it doesn't assume that the coach knows more than the person they're working with. With mentoring, there is an assumption that the mentor has experience or knowledge or life lessons or whatever it might be, professional capability, whatever, that they need to pass on to the mentee, the person that they're working with. So in this is applied just a little bit more telling, a little bit more instruction, perhaps giving advice or training could be part of a mentoring relationship, whereas giving advice and training is less likely to be part of coaching. All right, so I know it's a little bit confusing. It's an ongoing discussion. This, there seems to be agreement and also disagreement amongst the academics who work in this space. So there we go. First model is the GROW model. So this is one, if you've done any work in this field, GROW is a really well-liked and well-known framework. It stands for goal, reality, options, and will, mostly associated with coaching rather than mentoring. But the idea here is that the coach working with their client establishes this map of the world. So goal, what are you trying to get to? What do you want in the future? Reality, where are you now? What's your current situation? And then once we've worked those out, options, what could you do? What are your opportunities? What things could you try? How could you start to move from your reality towards your goal? Map of the world. And then so your options are your different pathways and things that you could do to begin to achieve your goals. What will you do? What are you prepared to commit to? What's your immediate action, your smart objective, the thing that you're going to do right now to begin to move yourself forward? Commitment. So grow and works equally well, I think, with individuals. So I think this is where John Whitmore. So John Whitmore's the author of this one. Initially about individuals, but it works really well in teams. So again, if you're doing a bit of strategy work with teams, and that team needs to kind of establish its plan or a solution to a challenge it's facing, it works really well in a team context. So it's more perhaps about in a team context. It's perhaps a bit more about facilitation than coaching. What's the team's goal? What's the team's reality? What options could the team agree to? What will the team do? to progress forward. So you can talk about this one both, I think, for individuals and teams. I would say a bit of kind of analyzing it a little bit, simple and effective. It's always taught, or every coaching program will have the grow model. It is very linear, so life isn't always as simple as this, and sometimes our goals, so it assumes that there's a goal. Sometimes people really don't know what their goal is. They don't have a goal, perhaps. So what do you do then? Uh, so that can be, what that can be tricky. And also, our goals aren't always that complicated. So, for example, on one hand, you might want to, your goal might be to grow a successful business. However, your goal also might to be a present parent or a good family member or a good, home every night at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or whatever, which just isn't necessarily going to sit well with your goal to grow a successful business, perhaps. So, our goals can kind of fall into conflict with each other. And again, the grow model doesn't really give us a framework. It's not really a framework to work through that level of complexity. So it's not always the best approach when things get complicated. It does work a lot of the time. I mean, it is good, and it's often a very good start point. But when there's no goal, or the issues that you're discussing with your client or your team are really complex, it doesn't always fit into this framework. So that's where model 2 comes in. So this is Peter Hawkins' clear model, and he advocates for this both um, in terms of individual and team coaching as well. So the contract is our agreement. How do we work together? What's people's commitment? How much time are we going to do this? Um, if we're talking about complex stuff, what's the confidentiality that sits around that? What's said in the room that stays in the room. Contracting is about our agreement to make sure that people understand what they're part of, that they're committed to it, and that they feel psychologically safe to engage in excuse me, in open and honest discussion. Listen, this is time for complexity. So this is where the coach or mentor just steps back and lets the person or the people talk. Just give them space. Um, Maybe ask some open questions, to kind of open them up and get the conversation going, thinking going, if you like. But the key thing here is we absolutely avoid giving any advice or direction. And this is where you allow for all of that messiness and complexity and disagreement and all of that type of kind of stuff that doesn't really fit into a structure. So what I like about the clear model is that it allows that space. And actually, in your first meeting or couple of meetings, that might be as far as you get. Explore is where you slightly change your position when you're coaching or mentoring. You become a little bit more engaged at this point, and you kind of walk side by side with your client or with the team. And this is maybe where you do start to offer experiences, advice, insights. Perhaps your questions become a little bit more leading. Here, you kind of go from being purely a listener and enabler to actually walking side by side and being a bit more of a collaborator, I would say. Action is where the individual or the team start to get to ideas about the way forward, things that they could do, changes that they could make, again, and these could be smart objectives. They might not be quite as clear as that, but they could be ideas about what need to happen next. And then the review is looking in and seeing if it's working. So is, after the session, have people gone and done what they said they would do? Are their plans and approaches and thoughts and ideas actually working, at delivering results? Is our method working? Are we, and if not, perhaps we might need to come back to contracting and do this differently, work out a different way of working if it's not ultimately delivering results. If it is delivering results, then how do we keep that going? And what do we need to perhaps do more of to really kind of keep the momentum behind the change that you're trying to bring about? So clear, as you can see, it's not as simple, it's not as linear as grow. It allows for more messiness and complexity, particularly that listen space, it doesn't assume anything. It's just about giving your client or colleague, the person that you're supporting, space to think and speak. So it's non-directive. It doesn't assume goals are known or understood. It does require skill to do, so there's quite a lot of fine judgment. I would say it's a more advanced model and way of working as a coach and mentor because it is non-linear. You might find that you go in every direction. So you might go to that explore place for a little bit where you're walking side by side, possibly making some suggestions, and then you uncover something new and you have to go back to listen. So it's definitely not linear. You can zip backwards and forwards and kind of be recursive. And, so because of that, it works well in complexity. So it's a more subtle, more complex framework to work with, requires a bit more skill and experience from the coach and mentor, but it does allow for more complex discussion and strategizing and that type of thing. So there we go. So over to you. Have you used a coaching mentor? Sorry, have you used a coaching model in your team, either with a team or with individuals within the team? I think either would be good to talk about. What have been your experiences? Did it help? Did it work? If you've done it again, either one-to-one or in team discussions, did you find that having a model or a tool helped you with it? What are your thoughts? So what judgments can you make about the model in terms of its benefits or the advantage that it's given you as a leader and manager? So there we go. There we go. And that's it. Another assessment criteria down. Hope that's been helpful. Thank you very much.